There are going to be a lot of certainties for Penn State wrestling this postseason, but there's still some question marks. How is Luke Lilledahl going to do? Braeden Davis, and there's one other wrestler we should be focused on ahead of the Big Ten tournament and the NCAA tournament.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked on to Penn State wrestling. Thanks so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. My name is Zach Seyko, and I'm your host of the show. And once again, I am joined by Jeff Byers, the expert, the voice of Penn State wrestling. He's also the morning show host over at 98.7 The Fox in State College, the Fox Sports Radio affiliate. Jeff, there's still question marks about this Penn State team. I think about how Tyler Kasak going into the postseason last year, and you and I discussed it, and then he ultimately went on the run that he did. So there was a lot of promising intel between what we had discussed, and then it ultimately came to fruition. So Luke Lilledahl, Braeden Davis, where does everything stand? And then talking about the true freshmen, Lilledahl's wrestled. We've now seen Joe Sealey, Cole Mirasola, and then some of the other big names that we haven't mentioned yet. We're going to talk about them in this episode, plus sending off the seniors since it is senior night this Friday. So, Jeff, let's begin with, we know that Mitchell Messenbrink, Carter Starocci, Levi Haynes, there are quite a number of wrestlers that are expected to be in the finals and ultimately win an NCAA final. Luke Lilledahl, Braeden Davis, to couple them together. And I know I didn't mention Beau Bartlett and Greg Kerkvliet, but they're in that group. For Lilledahl and Davis, though, they're kind of the outliers in a sense that there's question marks if they'll even make the podium. I like Luke Lilledahl and Braeden Davis's chances. So what are you seeing from Lilledahl and Davis that give you confidence going into the postseason?
Yeah, I think both of those guys are very dangerous. Luke Lilledahl, got caught, obviously, against McCrone. Give McCrone credit for the pin. But, aside from that moment, I think Lilledahl has just taken it up to another gear here since his initial loss of the season. I just think he's wrestling at a really high level right now. We kind of have typically seen this with the freshmen at Penn State, where they're plugging along, doing well, making adjustments. And then when you get into kind of late January throughout February, you just see them catch that next gear, and you start to see some things get figured out. And I think, even with a redshirt freshman like Josh Barr, you've seen that. And Josh obviously started at a pretty high level this year, but I think you've seen him take his game here in these last few weeks to another level as well. So, I think Luke Lilledahl is right in the mix there at 125. I think there's, probably the top two guys look like they're going to rightfully be the favorites going in, but I think Luke is right there with a group of 7 or 8 that could challenge to win it all there at 125. And Braeden Davis is certainly capable. I think just a matter of getting him feeling fresh and ready to go here when the postseason rolls around. I think he's excited for the opportunity, and I think 133 is a pretty open weight class as well. So I don't think there's a lot of margin for error there with any of those top guys in either of those weight classes. But I certainly think both Luke Lilledahl and Braeden Davis are right in the mix there for national titles.
The other wrestler that I referred to at the top of the show was Greg Kerkvliet, actually, because he was the clear favorite going into last year's heavyweight group, and he ultimately came out as a Big Ten and an NCAA champion. And then the king himself returns, Gable Steveson. So I think that's a conversation that needs to be brought up sooner rather than later, because we are going to see it. These two are on a crash course in the Big Ten tournament, and most likely the same thing at the NCAA tournament. I know there's chatter about how Wyatt Hendrickson, but I've seen Greg Kerkvliet dominate Wyatt Hendrickson now in seasons before, outside of collegiate wrestling as well. So it makes me believe that it's Steveson and Kerkvliet's match and nobody else really will get close here. So where is Kerkvliet in terms of how close he's gotten to Steveson, because I feel like Kerkvliet's been able to close the gap to an extent because he had that extra time to train and wrestle, whereas Steveson was off doing other things. Now, I get it. You don't forget how to ride a bike, but Kerkvliet, when that gap was so wide between the two of them, Kerkvliet was still wrestling and focusing on that 110% of the time, whereas it was WWE, NFL football, whatever it was, and Steveson wasn't hyper-focused on folk-style wrestling.
Yeah, I've been. I was expecting to see, because of that, some rest, and it might take Steveson a while to kind of get back into form. That has not been the case. That guy looks like
No,
he is at another level, even from where he was when we last saw him at the collegiate level. So, he is a very, very special wrestler. Greg's pretty special in his own right. As to where they're at with one another, nobody knows. We're going to find that out. That's what the Big Ten and the NCAA tournaments may show us. And, listen, I think there's some other guys that are in the mix there. Wyatt Hendrickson, certainly one of them. How much has he closed the gap, or is he there? Again, we can surmise all we want, and that's kind of the fun of it. But the truth is, we're not going to know until we see those matchups actually occur. And people can have their opinions, but it's all going to play out. I think it's going to be exciting from the Penn State perspective. It's going to be exciting to see whether Greg Kerkvliet can go shock the world. And I think overwhelmingly people are going to pick Steveson, and understandably and rightfully so. But yeah, I think Greg ought to feel good about his chances. He's certainly very familiar with Steveson. I think he has very good training partners to try to get him prepared for that match. But again, whether or not he can take him down, meaning beat him, not just get a takedown, but win the match, again, we'll find out. I think that's going to be the fun of this postseason. It is in a bunch of different weight classes, seeing which guys get it done when everything is actually on the line here.
Of the wrestlers that there's just a lot of contention at the top, Mitchell Messenbrink. There are a lot of things there are so many things that give me confidence when he's the assumed favorite. Eventually, I'm expecting him to win at 165. I know there's Parker Kakaisen at 184, and then Levi Haynes has Keegan O'Toole. But so what I'm getting at is, of the wrestlers that are in the lineup outside of Luke Lilledahl and Braeden Davis, who have the most questions around him, who's kind of that next wrestler where you just need one more thing for them to prove, that maybe something about the remaining outside competition? For me, that's Shane Van Ness. I think just because of the dual meet match against Ridge Lovett, Bartlett showed quite a bit, proved all the doubters wrong, that, hey, there's a real clear gap between him and Jesse Mendez, and no, it's who's best on that given day. So what other wrestler in the lineup, maybe it is a Levi Haynes because he had that loss and sudden victory, Jeff, where you say, okay, out of all, because like I said, out of the 10 starters, there's not a lot of question marks outside of Luke Lilledahl and Braeden Davis, but what's that one wrestler you just need one more thing to say, this gives me that much more confidence about an NCAA finals appearance and maybe even a victory?
Well, I mean, I think there's different, I don't think there's anything that gives me cause for concern in terms of the conference from the Penn State side. I think the issue may be just how many contenders there are at some of the weights. Like 141 to me, and I've been saying all along, and nothing that's happened changes my mind. There's 3 elite wrestlers there, and that's not to say that there aren't other guys that could sneak in and get a hot tournament and knock a couple of them off. Yep. But going in, I certainly am expecting that the national champion will come from Andrew Lira's, Jesse Mendez, and Beau Bartlett. And I think it's a coin flip in my mind with any of them matching up against either of the other two. So I think it's going to be fun to watch. I think, again, it won't be surprising to me to see any of them finish third and to see any of them win the title there. I think 197 to me, I know Stephen Buchanan is again, understandably and rightfully the favorite right now. But to me, there's 4 guys there that are clearly legit national title contenders. And Josh Barr certainly is one of them, along with AJ Ferrari, Jacob Cardenas, and obviously Stephen Buchanan. So, I think there's complete confidence that really all 10 Penn State guys are capable of making a run to the finals and winning a national title. I think the path there is more difficult for some of them than others, but I think there's, a very feasible path there really for all 10.
And Tyler Kasak coming out of concussion protocol, just Jeff briefly, Cale Sanderson has the most confidence in him in terms of his recovery and everything else. Before we talk about how the freshmen have developed this season, for Kasak, he's going to get back up to speed real quickly. And I anticipate that he'll be back for the Big Ten tournament. Maybe we see him against American, but I don't think he has anything to prove against American University on Friday. So it's better to play it safe and then wait for the Big Ten tournament for him to catch up on things.
Yeah, he's made very good progress, and he's just such a tough, hard-nosed kid, and has that competitive drive, not unlike Carter Starocci in terms of, hey, I'm going to do and find a way to do whatever I need to get the win here. And I just think Kasak has that edge to him. And so, yeah, I think he'll be ready and raring to go. And I think, certainly in my mind, he's the guy to beat there at 157, both at Big Tens and at NCAAs. And so I don't think there's much concern there. And really, on the injury front, hopefully there's no sickness, that they get that out of the way this week. I mean, that's something you can never obviously completely anticipate. But I think from the injury front, this team should be completely healthy, ready to go, unless, something unforeseen happens in practice or in the American Duel.
Knock on wood, because that absolutely happened last season with Carter Starocci, but he was able to overcome all the adversity and then some. So this Penn State lineup is up to the task, whatever is thrown their way, including the freshmen. I mean, we've seen plenty of Luke Lilledahl. We got to see Cole Mirasola develop as a heavyweight, and Joe Sealey went through a minor surgery, but still surgery, and came back and is now competing as a backup at 157. We're going to talk about how all the freshmen have developed this season, coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. Today's show is brought to you by Roy. Attention Nittany Lion fans, the future of college sports is here, and it's transparent. Before the Roy app, NIL negotiations often happened under the table. Fans didn't have a clear way to directly support the athletes that they care about. Now, with Roy, you get to be a part of the change and support Penn State athletes, your favorite school, in the most transparent way possible. Roy, the NIL app, allows you to choose the player you want to support, decide how much you want to contribute, and receive exclusive content from the athletes that you back. The best part is if the player transfers, you get your money back. It's a risk-free way to show your support. The Roy app gives fans control. No more uncertainty. Now you can provide transparent, impactful support and help shape the team and the future of college sports with your contributions. Download the Roy app now from the App Store and start backing Penn State or your favorite school's athletes the way they deserve, with transparency, trust, and a real impact. This is the future of college sports. Join it now by downloading Roy and supporting your favorite players. So, of course, Luke Lilledahl being the starter at 125, yes, there's plenty of a scouting report, and we know that how he's developed and the things that he does struggle with and the things that he's really good at. Joe Sealey, I want to begin with, Jeff, and it's not to... Look, now that we know what we know, beforehand, it was kind of easy to write off Joe Sealey and say, well, he wrestled against Ohio State and he didn't look that good. And then against Illinois, sure, the takedown was taken away from him, but it really shouldn't have been that close for somebody that's a top 10 recruit in the nation. And we knew from what Cale Sanderson had mentioned earlier that, hey, Sealey wasn't 100%. He was dealing with some bumps and bruises, but we never really got any clarification. And then this week we did, that he had a minor procedure, and now he's back from it and competing to the best of his abilities, which impresses me above all else. I think for somebody that, maybe could take some more time and rest and recover and then get back to the swing of things and just kind of practice and go through some training, but he's ready to compete. Jeff, what has impressed you about Joe Sealey the most, whether it's the grit or the toughness or just how quickly he was able to recover from this procedure?
Yeah, I think, this whole freshman class, and I guess you probably say it about the Penn State program as a whole, but this class really just has that passion, that enthusiasm for the sport, and for the opportunity to compete. And I think they're just a really good, humble group. They like getting in there, mixing it up, learning a little bit every day. I just think as a group, they're going to have very, very special careers here. And certainly Joe Sealey is just a guy that I think really kind of encapsulates what Penn State wants in its wrestlers, in terms of the humility, the willingness to go out there and compete, and to learn from each experience. And again, that at the end of the day, that's what the sport probably does better than any other in my mind, is just allow you to keep constantly learning, keep getting better, improving yourself. And again, I think those lessons carry well over into life. So, very impressed with Joe Sealey, not at all surprised with the toughness and the passion that he brings. And I think, again, regardless of the outcome in the Illinois meet, you saw in that third period that competitive edge that is what's going to allow him to have success throughout the rest of his career here.
What is his outlook exactly? Because I guess this is just a question for me personally. Is it 157? Is it 165? I've seen people say that, hey, eventually he's going to make it to 174. What is his path? Is he going to float? Because Mitchell Messenbrink's still there for 2 more years. Levi Haynes has another season. Shane Van Ness has 2 more seasons. Tyler Kasak has 2 more seasons. So, I know Van Ness is at 149, but my point is all those middleweights, aside from Haynes, are taken up for the next 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we don't know is the short answer. Right?
All right, so I'm on the same page here.
We got to wait and see. I don't know how he's going to physically mature, develop, and these guys are going to have to kind of figure out, all right, this is where I need to go if I want to be in the lineup. And obviously some of them aren't going to be in the lineup for 4 years, and we're going to see how patient some of them are in terms of being willing to bide their time and then get the opportunity here versus going elsewhere. And from everything I'm hearing and seeing, and certainly things can change quickly in the offseason, but I don't get the feeling that there's going to be a lot of these guys that depart, even if there's not a starting opportunity in that first season that maybe they'd be expecting to start. I think there's a genuine love for the program, but more so just the environment and the culture that they have here. I mean, I think it's kind of a commitment to each other, a commitment to the coaches, and to some degree Penn State as well. But I just think these guys are happy with the experience they're getting, with what it's like in that room day in and day out. And again, that doesn't mean you're not going to have a guy here or there end up leaving. That certainly would seem very likely when you look at the logjam of talent that they have in some different spots, and the middleweight's certainly one of them. But regardless of how it plays out, I will just say these guys across the board are just what you want in student athletes in terms of being willing to do whatever is asked of them day in and day out, and really just focusing on the process and trying to embrace that and not get as caught up on the day-to-day results in terms of the competition, just win, lose, or anything in between. It's just, again, part of the learning process right now, and trying to put that into the vault for future reference. And again, we'll see how it all plays out. I mean, there were people last year wondering, where Levi Haynes was going to fit in the lineup, how Tyler Kasak and Alex Facunda would play out. some of that stuff sometimes takes care of itself, and other times, again, it just it plays out, and somebody's got to make some hard decisions. So I don't know how it's all going to play out moving forward. They're going to have a similar situation, obviously, between 84 and 97 next year with Zach Ryder and Connor Mirasola, and obviously Josh Barr back in the mix. Again, you only have 2 starting spots there, and you have 3 extremely talented wrestlers in those weight classes. So we'll see how it plays out. I think it's going to be fun speculation for the fans and tough competition in the room, but I think it's that's the type of competition that you love seeing in your program, because it certainly speaks volumes about just how strong this program is right now.
I think it's fair to group them all together because they are the upper weights. Zach Ryder, Connor and Cole Mirasola. Now, I know because of need, we saw Cole Mirasola, but he's still got a long ways to go in terms of his development because he was wrestling at 97 kilos, and that's not 285 pounds. So for him to go out there around, I got to imagine give or take 220, 225 pounds and going up against competitors that are 250, 260 plus, and for him to hold his own that way. But the wrestlers that we haven't seen, his twin brother, Connor, who we know is at 197, and then Zach Ryder at 184, and then Josh Barr is really settled in at 197. So you alluded to that dilemma a year from now. But who's impressed you the most? I know we haven't seen Zach Ryder. I know we haven't seen Connor, and we've got a glimpse of Cole. But in terms of all of their development, are they on the same pace? Is there one that's outpacing the others?
Well, I mean, Ryder certainly had an outstanding tournament at the Southern Scuffle, and I think he just has a very engaging personality, and I think is a guy that really just is embracing being part of this program. I think he and Carter have developed a pretty special relationship, and I think to some extent Carter has kind of taken him under his wing, and so all of those guys are developing very well. Cole Mirasola is going to be a force to be reckoned with here at heavyweight. Connor, obviously, the accolades he brings in. And again, I think Luke Lilledahl is right in the mix here for, certainly for All-America honors. But I really think with the way he has kind of put some things together here over the last few weeks, I think he'll be right there in the hunt for a national title this year. At 125, and certainly all of those guys, all of the freshmen, I just think have extremely bright futures in terms of their wrestling careers. It's just a really, really special group.
Well, let's finish briefly with Luke Lilledahl and then talk about the present and soon to be past in those seniors with senior night. Luke Lilledahl did get pinned against McCrone, and Cale Sanderson was very, not necessarily vocal, but transparent in the fact that, hey, Lilledahl's, when the choice is there, opponents are going to say, we're going to take top and force Luke Lilledahl into a spot that's just not his strength. So I know it's the simple answer is just work on it, but where is Luke Lilledahl in terms of his defense and just when he's not on his feet, how he can counter some of those better wrestlers? Because that's, I think, the only thing that's holding him back from being at the top for this 125-pound weight class, and that's saying something for a true freshman.
Yeah, I think it really is just that. You keep working on it, make little adjustments. And I think he's improving there, and I think the lesson learned against McCrone will serve him well when the postseason rolls around. But yeah, I think he's right there again in the mix with the best of them there at 125 this year.
We'll talk about the seniors: Beau Bartlett, Carter Starocci, Greg Kerkvliet, everything they've given to the program, and what to expect from this dual meet against American University coming up this Friday in Rec Hall to finish out the regular season. All that's coming up next after the break. Beau Bartlett at 141, Carter Starocci at 174, and then moving up to 184, and Greg Kerkvliet has been the staple at heavyweight for Penn State. I mean, these guys have given everything to this Penn State wrestling program, truly, because I mean, they've gone through multiple senior days in a sense, and then they had that opportunity to come back, and it wasn't a certain thing, a guarantee, but then Starocci knew that it was for the best. Kerkvliet knew that it was for the best, and I feel like Bartlett kind of knew all along that he still wanted to scrap and just be a folk style wrestler for one more season, where it wasn't so much of a direct decision for Starocci and Kerkvliet. But they've certainly, all three of them together have never experienced a dual meet loss. That's the standard. They've kind of, they're a part of history. They've set a bar. They've set a standard that everybody else has to follow and keep up with. So when I hear things like Carter Starocci has taken Zach Ryder under his wing and that there's going to be a passing of the torch in a sense. But Jeff, how would you sum up, how would you describe what Carter Starocci, Greg Kerkvliet, and Beau Bartlett have done for this program, especially with all of the circumstances with COVID and everything they've had to deal with along the way?
Yeah, I mean, it's a remarkable group for sure. I think, Beau Bartlett has just been one of the most engaging wrestlers that's come through the program. I think just has a really nice perspective on the sport, on what his place is in it, on the program, and on his future. He just is an extremely thoughtful young man, and I think certainly very talented, and I think has been able to really figure things out and adjust his game as he's gone along here. And again, I certainly hope that he has the opportunity to go out on top. But if he doesn't, it's not going to be for a lack of effort. And I don't think it's going to be, a situation where he hangs his head low, because he's going to know he's given it everything he can and he's put everything into it. So, I think when I think of Beau Bartlett, I just think of the perspective that I think he has brought to the program. And I think he's been one of those kind of good calming influences in the room. And I think Greg Kerkvliet, you could probably say much the same thing about. He just a guy that has gotten better each year, has been able to figure some things out for himself. He's a quieter wrestler and probably more introspective, but I think he's a guy just with immense talent. I'm still not sure if he understands just how talented he really is. He just has an amazing amount of ability, and another guy that just works his tail off and keeps getting better and better, and listens to the coaches and makes adjustments and all of that. And listen, Carter Starocci obviously has a chance to carve out a legacy unlike any other in the history of the sport if he can win that fifth title. And I just think, for Carter, it's just, to me, when I think of Carter, and obviously we've had a ton of extremely highly competitive guys come through this program. I just don't know that there's anybody that matches Carter Starocci in terms of just sheer competitive desire and that will to win. And certainly was on display last year in the NCAA tournament. But, I think he's a guy that just has a lot of maturity now, a real understanding of where he is, what he needs to do, how he needs to do it. And he just is really good at taking care of his business.
And I think I obviously couldn't say it any better. And you followed their careers for the longest time. And it's going to be nice they continue. They will stay with the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club. And what you described with Beau Bartlett, it sounds like he has coach written all over him at some point. And I know they just hired Nick Lee, and I know nothing, and I'm not trying to imply that anything's going to change to the staff, but even just having Bartlett present in that room. So even though he won't have the official title as coach, but somebody that's just going to mentor, to work with everybody and be so selfless at the end of the day. I mean, that goes such a long way. I imagine that he's already kind of taken on that role as it is in his final season.
Yeah, I think all of those guys have to one degree or another. And the truth is the younger guys have it as well. It's one of the many unique things I think about Cale and his approach, in that they don't have they don't name season captains or anything because they expect everybody to be accountable to themselves and to their teammates. So, it really is a room full of leaders, and certainly the seniors are leaders and have been great examples. But I think up and down that lineup, I mean, Luke Lilledahl is a great example of what you want your wrestlers to be. Certainly Levi Haynes. Again, you go up and down the lineup, and you just have that, and it's not just the starters. So, I think probably most, if not all of these guys, if they want to get into coaching at one level or another, certainly know the sport, have passion for it, and just because of the culture they are in here at Penn State, they know how to communicate and pass on some of that knowledge and the techniques and all of that. So it'll be interesting to see, I think, how many of these guys and which ones do get into coaching at whatever level they do. But regardless of whether it's in coaching or it's, they go on to business or other careers in the professional world, I think all of these guys are certainly very well set for successful life opportunities.
American University, this Friday, February 21st, 7 p.m. in Rec Hall. Jeff goes live on the air. You can stream that at gopsusports.com beginning at 6:40. Status quo for the lineup, but at 157, do not be surprised if Tyler Kasak does not make an appearance, and Joe Sealey gets the nod again at that weight class. And some familiar names on the American University side for people that appreciate Pennsylvania wrestling from Central Pennsylvania, from Bald Eagle, Cohen Baney. I recognized that immediately when I saw those lineups. Cohen Baney stood out as a true freshman at 125, so he'll face Luke Lilledahl. And then at 165, Caden Milheim of Warrior Run out of Muncie, Pennsylvania. So Jeff, those names probably you immediately stood out on the page as well when you saw this American University lineup.
Yeah, for sure. And listen, this is an American team that'll these guys will scrap. I mean, they're going to come out and wrestle you hard for 7 minutes, and it's kind of one of those things where Penn State is going to outman them. But I don't think they're going to out hustle or outwork them necessarily. I think this is a team that's going to come in and again battle and scrap. And I'm not sure with some of the sickness going around who all is or isn't going to be in the lineup here for Penn State. But any starters that are healthy enough to go are going to go. I mean, that's just the way Penn State does it. So, I think certainly you're hoping from the Penn State side you get just a little extra dose of confidence coming out of this for your starters, and that you get out of this dual meet without any further injuries heading into the postseason.
We all know that too well just from a season ago. And like I said, hoping, of course, for the best. But that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. Let us know your thoughts down in the comment section. Thank you so much for checking out this episode. All of links to Jeff's work outside of college wrestling will be outside of Penn State wrestling coverage will be linked down in the description. Thanks, Jeff, so much for the time as always. Really appreciate it. So close to the postseason. We got one more regular season dual meet at Rec Hall, and it'll be a fun one as always.
Thanks, Zach.
And again, thank you so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. For your second listen and watch, got to check out Locked On Big Ten with host Craig Sheeman. Craig puts the Big Ten first, covers all 18 schools in depth. That's why it's called Locked On Big Ten. It's available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, and it is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.